Oh, we've got winter storm warnings up for a pretty large area across Pennsylvania, the northern half of New Jersey. The National Weather Service in Philadelphia, Mount Holly, just added Monmouth County to the winter storm warning, as well as New York City, Long Island, the Hudson Valley, Connecticut, Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts. We've got flood watches and severe weather going on in the south. We've got all sorts of other things in play here. So we're going to try to piece it all together in what is a very complex, and I think Joe Rayo will agree with me, a very low confidence type of forecast that we're dealing with tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast, and use the coupon code WINTER 2324, which can't go away fast enough, and you will get
10% off, Joe.
And there we are. I have been just one thing's come really front and center for me today, Joe.
Is it one of those days where you wanted to take a nail and a hammer it into your head?
I usually refer to putting an ice pick into my eye. No, today it came, pretty much full revelation. There are too many models.
And wait a minute. Hey, Tom Contino, love it. I love it. He's off and running, Joe. Hey, Rich, what are your thoughts for Long Island? Because Joe Rayo is much too low. Tom, away we go. How many minutes are we into the show? 1 minute, and already I got my first Tom Contino insult. And more, I'm sure, are to come, ladies and gentlemen.
Here's the thing.
Tom Contino, I have 41 years of meteorology background. I have a degree in earth and planetary science. So what's your opinion? Or why would you state an opinion like that? As my grandfather would say, Joe, my Italian grandfather, uffa, mannaggia la bomba creiserial. You know.
Oh, good Lord.
Off we go.
Well, why don't would it not, and I always just find this so interesting. It hasn't even happened yet, okay?
Yes.
Don't you love it? It hasn't even happened yet, and they're already telling you you're wrong.
Exactly.
And actually, it's not just today, but the day before. I've been getting that on and off for the last 3 or 4 days. Hasn't even happened yet. You're already wrong.
And one of our colleagues, Craig Allen, who we all respect, he's been in the business as long as we have, Joe. And on his Facebook page tonight, he says, I've looked at so many models. I'm just going to take a bunch of them, throw them up against the wall, and whatever sticks, I'll use on News Radio 880 tonight. I mean, that's basically the story. It has changed. This thing has been flipping every which way, and I really don't know. And you don't know either.
But no, I don't. And I'll be honest. The forecast I put out, and I did something I don't usually do. I had a final call that I put out this morning, and when I started, right, which already accounted for the fact that the system was shifting southward. But when that continued during the day today, I had to redo it, and it was kind of fun. What was funny about it was, to me, was the fact that, so I this morning I happened to see Dave Tolleris's last call, okay, and
Right.
I looked at his map and I looked at my map and I said, my God, we're pretty close. Well, I decided late this afternoon to put out I redo my final call, which I'm going to show up in a minute. And I don't put that up on social media. You have to be on my subscription platform for that. So I don't put it up on social media. And then Dave did what he called his last call, because he did the same thing. I guess he got nervous about what was going on. And I looked at his map and I looked at my map, and they're almost identical. It's like two back-to-back maps. Now, I don't know if that's, I would like to say complimentary to Dave, because, I do like Dave, that, it's a good sign that we're both on the same page. And yet at the same time, I'm thinking maybe it's not a good sign that we're both on the same page. Because in all truthfulness, it's really, really, I have no vested interest and neither do you. There's no vested interest here whether we get an inch or a foot. I want to get the forecast right. that to me is paramount. It's most important. And I can't remember the last time going into a storm feeling this way, where it's right the day before. I mean, sometimes my confidence level is high. Sometimes it's kind of moderate, but it's never low. And my confidence level here tonight on my forecast is low.
Now, let me ask you a question. Would you do another map tonight after
No,
the Z runs are in, or just
no. I'm going to tell you, I'm not even going to look at them. I'm not even going to look at the next runs and models. I'm just going to let it play. I went to bed last night without looking at anything, and I thought, okay, when I wake up this morning, if I see if there's a winter storm watch up for New York City and Long Island, then I know the models came in further south. And sure enough, when I woke up this morning at 5 o'clock, that's where they were. So look, this is my final call, and then we could put up your too low for Long Island map on your Facebook. And by the way, you're going to find, and Joe and I usually, I mean, we don't never, we're rarely 100%. Sometimes we get close. We're rarely 100%, but usually we're in general agreement. In the years that we've been doing this now, which is almost 5 years, um, I think this is the first time where we're like, you know, kind of far apart.
yes,
And I have my reasons for doing this. Joe has his reasons, and I think either side is perfectly valid. Okay. So it's a forecast, and you don't grade the forecast until after the event is over. So tomorrow night, one of us, since we are far apart, one of us is going to be, how shall we say, well, more right than the other. Maybe some of us will be better in some areas than in others. And the other thing, Joe, is you never get it 100% right. You kind of hope for 90. Maybe on a really good map, you get like 94, 95. I'll settle. I'll settle for 60 to 70% of this being correct.
right. I agree. It's going to be it's going to be pretty going to be pretty interesting to see what ultimately happens. But as you said, Joe, we both have our reasons for going for what we went for, and I'll let you go first with your map, and then everybody can take a look and see mine.
Okay. So what I did was, the reason why I had to change it a second time was because the I actually had an 8-inch line pretty far up the Hudson Valley and fairly far up into Massachusetts. And after I saw what was going on this morning, and particularly during this afternoon, I came to a point where it's like I got to change it. I just have to change it. So I have really pulled down, and I'm going to tell you right now, in terms of some of the stuff that I've been seeing, there's a case to be made that if you're from Poughkeepsie northward, you might not see much out of this. I think there's a case for that, particularly because if we're dealing with a deepening storm that's good that is even further south than what was being indicated yesterday. I'm going on the premise that the dynamics, we're going to get a really supercharged dynamic cooling episode late tonight and through the morning tomorrow, and that we're going to see band of heavy snow break out. It may be a fairly narrow band, but I've got it inside this six. I basically drew two 6-inch lines, and I wrote in between the potential for 6 to 10. I also raised amounts across central New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania. I actually have Philadelphia getting at least 4, and I'm nervous about that. I might be too high. But now that the Mount Holly went and put Monmouth County in the winter storm warning makes me feel a little better because they didn't change. What struck me, Joe, with Mount Holly today, by the way, was the fact that this afternoon, when they put out their afternoon package, they changed absolutely nothing. And they were pretty bullish, pretty far north. And I'm thinking, you had to have to change something with regards to what the dayside guidance showed. But I guess maybe now they're rethinking that, especially after what WPC did, which we'll also show. And then I think there actually could even be some accumulating snows down in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, although I didn't pull it far enough south. I pulled it down to about Baltimore. I didn't quite pull it down as far south as D.C., but it wouldn't shock me if that winds up happening. So I'm going for the big dynamics. I'm going for the idea. I don't think the issue is the other way around. This is not going to be something that's going to be further north. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to mean, turn out to be rain. If anything, if the amounts are lower, I still think that that might mean that the heavier accumulations will be more to the south rather than to the north. And I know you're going to say that, well, you got about a 6 hour window from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. to put it all down. Well, it's not impossible, given the dynamics. And the other thing, Joe, that hasn't really got much attention that I really want to mention is the fact that we're dealing with a strengthening storm where the pressures are going to drop 20 millibars in a handful of hours, taking a track right through the box. And in terms of the satellite structure, I think there's going to be a comma head with this, and somebody's going to get under that comma head. And those are the areas that are going to wind up seeing the highest amounts, depending on where exactly that comma head sets up. It may set up over south coastal Connecticut, Long Island, um, central and parts of coastal New Jersey. I think have a chance to see that. So that's my reasoning.
Okay. Anything else you want to add before
No, the floor is
that?
yours. The floor is yours, as you
Okay.
wish.
All right. So let me. I'll put my guess up, and we'll talk a little bit about this. Now, first of all, the window of opportunity for really impressive snowfall or impressive intensities is going to be, I think, Joe, between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. That's a 4 hour window. Now, if we get 2 inches per hour during that 4 hour window, well, my goodness, that means we're going to see 8 inches in that 4 hour window. And that's right in the middle of your range for much of the lower Hudson Valley, as the 6 to 10 that you have up there. On the other hand, if we only get an inch per hour over 4 hours, we'll get 4 inches. And that would put me closer to the 3 to 6 that I have for this uh, for this zone, which covers, again, a good part of the lower Hudson Valley. Now, right about here, south of Interstate 287, I have 2 to 3 inches. Now, 2 to 3 inches, Tom Contino. And you say, oh, well, Joe Rayo's much too low, which is 2 to 3. After all, we saw the European and other models starting to trend further south. So obviously, if it trends further south, there's got to be a lot more than just 2 to 3. Well, it's true. But Tom and everybody else, keep in mind that you need to get that temperature at or below freezing in order to convert over to snow. Also, I've been hearing a lot, Joe, about dynamics. Oh, well, the dynamics are going to be so impressive that it's going to manufacture its own cold air and it's going to drop those temperatures below 32. And that's when the snow is really going to start to stay. Yeah, it's true. But have you noticed that over the last 2 to 3 days, with all of the runs, the F-Gen, the area of maximum atmospheric energy, at one point 2 or 3 days ago, was up here over the middle Hudson Valley region. And now, with time, the F-Gen has shifted south more and more and more. And now, on the European this afternoon, the 12Z European run, it's almost encompassing all of Long Island and also much of northern and north central New Jersey. And you say, yeah. But one other thing is that the F-Gen has not been quite as dynamic. The contour lines have opened up a bit. It's not that tremendously dense area of atmospheric energy that we were seeing 2 or 3 days ago. So there's going to be energy. The maximum atmospheric energy is going to be between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Yes, no question. Where is the positioning of that is eventually going to be? Is it going to be further south? And is it going to be as intense as it was being indicated 24 or 48 hours ago? And seemingly it's not. It's going further south, and it's also not getting quite as intense as what was depicted, again, a couple of days ago. And also, the fact is that if you look at the thermographic information on the models, Joe, they all indicate the same thing, that the temperatures right up through the middle part of the storm, or right up until the maximum, is going to be, especially down here across Long Island and New York and much of New Jersey, still is going to be at or above freezing. So the question in my mind is, if it does change over to snow, is it going to come down hard enough and fast enough to produce those significant snowfalls? My God, I have seen snowfall amounts of 4 to 8 and 6 to 10. I've heard the Mayor Adams, has closed the schools and said all the kids will have to do their schoolwork from home, interactive or virtually. Uh, it's a lot of talk here, and also the other thing is this is the biggest snowfall New York has seen in 2 years. Well, true, it's true, but they're talking like this is a storm that's going to drop a foot or more, and I have questions about that. The other thing is, how quickly is everything going to move? My God, it's going to be moving in the heaviest part 5 or 6 in the morning, but by 10 a.m., mark my word, it's already going to be exiting out to the east. And by 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, don't be surprised if it's all over and you're actually seeing the sunshine. So how much can you squeeze into that 4 or 5 hour period? Will we see 2 and 3 inches an hour, or will we only get an inch or two? What are going to be the snow ratios? I agree. And Joe, you've probably noticed it as well that on Tropical Tidbits, that they give you two options for snow accumulation. One, the 10-to-1 ratio, which is indeed giving northern Jersey and Long Island and New York, numbers like 10 and 12 inches. And then there's the other option where it takes into account sleet or a lower ratio, which cuts that in half. So
Yeah,
what?
I don't like that. I actually do not like that tropical tidbits. I forgot what it's called now. Um, hold on. Uh, the positive snow depth changed.
Yeah,
I don't like that map. I don't disagree with much of what you say. I think this is just a matter of how this all plays out.
and
Um,
also compression. I mean,
and
that's another
compression.
thing. Compression,
I
seven to
yeah,
eight, seven or 8-to-1 ratio. It's
I,
going to be,
and
except
I
in the
agree
storm.
with that. I agree with that. 8 to 1. I'm thinking over an inch. I'm thinking an inch and a quarter of liquid out of all of this, and some areas much of that'll be snow, maybe not all of it, but no, I don't disagree. Look, I'm not going to disagree with your forecast because I think you have you certainly have very valid reasons for doing what you're doing. Um, you know, there's not much else I can say.
I
One
will
of
tell
us,
you also,
we'll know tomorrow.
I will tell you also that my wife, who is a meteorologist, believe it or not, we met at a weather company way back when, and she looked at my original map from yesterday and last night. I had 2 to 5 inches in much of the Hudson Valley, and she says, "Well, maybe you ought to tweak it just a little bit, bring it up a little bit." So I said, "Okay." So I made it 3 to 6 instead of 2 to 5, but it certainly does not compare, again, with many of the other forecasts that I have seen, both on the local TV media and also on radio, where again, many of the forecasts are calling for 6 to 10, 6 to 12 inches, 8 to 12 inches. I mean, it's incredible. Now, up here, you're right, Joe. Up here in parts of Dutchess and Sullivan and Ulster County, if indeed the European, especially, is correct with its southward push, a lot of what's going to happen up here is going to be less than what I have is 6 to 8, and I even mentioned 8 to 12 in the high elevations above 2,000 feet in portions of Ulster and Sullivan County. It may very well be, in fact, a sharp cutoff line somewhere around here as to where the snow completely ends. But you know what? It has been vacillating and moving so much over the last 2 days. And I said to myself, should I change up here? And I said, the heck with it. I'll change some of it, but I'm not going to change all of it. And whatever happens, let everything, because who knows, tonight we may see the FGM back up to the north, and we may see snow accumulation amounts heavier up here.
Well, I'm not looking. I'm not going to look.
I'm
I'm,
just,
I'm
banging my head up against the wall here as to what exactly to call for. So, and you're going to
well,
show, the WPC map, which they really are going crazy.
yeah. So
So wow.
I'm going to switch to that. And actually, this was the last HRRR model, which I want to come back to when the 0Z one comes out. We'll go to WPC's forecast. But before we do that, um, uh, I'm going to do the super chats that have just hit the tape, um, and then you can ring the bell because we're over 100 likes. But let's start off, Joe, with Tom Contino banging the tip jar.
Yay,
He
Tom!
says, Joe Rayo, love you, but you're wrong on underestimating the dynamics.
Don't you
Joe,
love? Don't you love how people sometimes you say you go on Angie's List, for example, and you give the reviews. And can you imagine giving a review of some place that you've signed on to fix your pipes or your plumbing or something in your home before they even start work on it? Yeah, you did a lousy job. Hey, Mister, I didn't even start yet. Yeah, but you still did a lousy job. This is basically what I feel right now. We haven't had a flake, an ice pellet, a raindrop yet, and already I'm getting criticized for being too low. So there you go.
yes. In fact, this has inspired me, Joe, um, to put up a poll. Okay. So I'm going to put up a poll, and give me one
I
second
love
while I.
Vincent. I love Vincent Croce too. He says, "Joe Rayo, you've been nipping at that rum candy again."
um, why is it not letting me? I just created the poll, but it's not letting me post it. Oh, here we go. Start poll. I got to delete that box. Okay, start poll. So I've put up a poll. It's pinned to the top of the chat board, and basically, who has the better snow forecast, Joe Rayo or me? And we'll let this run, and we'll see. We might as well forecast that way. It is just as good a chance of coming out correct as anything else. Howard A, thank you for hitting the super chat tip jar. Appreciate your hard work, and this is a very difficult forecast. That it is indeed. Helen Bertona, I only rely on you guys. Thank you for hitting the tip jar. Joe Arabia, nice to see you on the show tonight and watching. And thank you for hitting super chat. Junior Ferrante, he's one in your camp, Joe. He says, hate to turn on Cioffi, but I think Rayo nails this one for New York City. And David Fuller hitting super chat. Joe
Twice.
Rayo, is there any way you could do all of New Jersey like Joe C. Does his map? I've asked Joe to do that, Dave, just on the record, to go wider on his snowfall forecast maps. So um, take that into consideration, Mr. Rayo. You're getting a request from an audience member.
All right.
Jeff Yinkst, thank you for hitting super chat. He says NWS has you at 1 to 3, so many numbers going around crazy. Local Facebook meteorologists have us at 4 to 8 and 5 to 10. Always wait for you guys. Thank you, Jeff. Where do you live? Like, actually, if you could just give me a general location of where you are, I'd be curious. David Fuller also hitting the super chat again. He was the first one out of the gate, and uh, he
That's for the
said that
152 likes
I
we have.
haven't I haven't, David. I haven't seen anything. I mean, I haven't really looked hard enough. That they were sending out a plane to go into this tomorrow morning to get more
I
data.
saw that. I saw that tonight. Actually, for the 0Z run, they plan to drop maybe 10 or even 15 songs into the.
Oh well, you know what? Maybe that'll help the cause and cut all the numbers in half,
Yep.
um, or double them. Long Island weather just hitting the tip jar. Thank you. Hurricane hunters are in the storm, giving fresh data on the 0Z. Okay, so let's hope that does some good to the models. We'll see how it plays. All right, so this is WPC, and I set it up, by the way, right off the bat. This is the probability for at least 8. Okay, and now I as a general rule, when I look at WPC, I use the 50% line. So that's this, not the darkest blue, but the next shade lighter. And I'm just coloring it now in purple so that you can see it. Um, Oh, I made a mistake here. Hold on. Let me try this again. Okay, so, I'm trying. My eyes are not what they used to be. I got lost, Joe, somewhere off of Cape Cod with this. All right, so basically, this is what it looks like because they have it extended out in the ocean. So they have a fairly high area probability of at least 8 that cuts across the North Shore of Long Island to New York City and back through New Jersey, along and north of Route 78 for the most part, and also into northeastern Pennsylvania. WBC has done a fairly good job with this, so I'm going to just sort of put that at least in my camp in the standpoint of the chance that I could hit my numbers that I have, which are higher than what Joe has. The probability of at least 4 is actually quite extensive, and the 50% line from Sandy Hook down to south of 195 and then west to about just near Philadelphia, not too far from Philadelphia. Trenton is in it, and they're in a winter storm warning there, and near Philadelphia, and then kind of riding south of Harrisburg along the Pennsylvania Maryland line. And on the north side, they've got the 50% line to southern New Hampshire, down into northwestern Massachusetts, and well, not quite to well south of Albany, but let's say Kingston, or maybe a little bit north of Kingston, and back over into the Catskills. So WPC, at least from their standpoint and their forecast, they updated at shortly before. Actually, they updated this late. They updated it at after 4 o'clock. They usually have it updated between 3 and 4, but they didn't put it out until 20 minutes after 4. And well, there you have WPC going a little more aggressive. The other thing I also picked up on with WPC on their QPF, which I thought was kind of interesting, they have an inch and a quarter of liquid, southern Connecticut, Long Island, um, much of north central Jersey, let's call it, between 195 and 78. And they actually have a stripe of an inch and a half plus, touching New York City and the South Shore of Long Island, of Western Long Island, then back down into central New Jersey and going west toward Philadelphia. So, they've actually, gotten above what the models are. And that was another thing, Joe, that came to my head today, was the fact that uh, we've we've seen for months and months now where these storms have vastly outperformed, and not by a small margin either. They have vastly outperformed when it's come to precipitation. So this is going to be interesting to see if this storm joins that group and winds up producing more. And the guidance is giving anywhere between an inch and a quarter, depending on what model you look at. So, there is that. I mean, there's always the chance that this thing could outperform precipitation wise.
Well, that's the chance, but of course, also, and I've been saying this now for several days. If it's going to outperform, it really is going to have to bomb out. The old fashioned terminology, bombogenesis, and now, of course, the news media has kicked that out the door and has replaced it with bomb cyclone. I'm surprised I haven't heard that much in the last couple of days. But if it's gonna outperform, it's really gonna have to blow up real
Well,
quick.
you're dropping 20 millibars in a handful of hours. I think that qualifies for rapid deepening. I
It
mean,
does.
it
It
goes
does.
from high 990s to almost a 975 low when it's approaching the Cape. I mean, that's, you want to catch it while it's deepening. So it is going to be doing that. I just putting that out there.
I'm just saying again that what has changed over the last couple of days is the positioning of the FGen contours, which were north of the city, and also so tightly packed. I mean, I know on the NAM, for example, they were so tightly, they looked like a moire type pattern where, it almost was like scrunched together into a single blob of color instead of actually being able to see the contours. And now, again, further to the south, actually more to the south of Long Island or the south of New York City, and the lines have now opened up a bit, which indicates that the intensity may not be quite as strong as what was being indicated again a day or two ago. Again, it's all going to be based on temperatures. By the way, I went outside just a little while ago. I have a device where I can take the temperature of the ground, of the surface, and right in front of my garage and at the top of my driveway, the ground is 42 degrees, Joe. Meanwhile, the
All
air
right.
temperature was 35 or 36. Meanwhile, at the bottom of my driveway, 270 feet away, it was 33. And the road that I live on or live off of was just barely above freezing. And they haven't done anything to the road, by the way. Renata said,
Well,
well,
so much for the warm ground then.
yeah, so much for the warm ground, at least the warm roadway.
Well,
And I
look,
also,
yeah, the warm ground thing is so overplayed. I mean, that is just so, and depending on how intensity trumps. I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again. Intensity trumps. I don't care how warm it's been the day before. It could be 80 degrees, and we've seen that, by the way, a few years back, where it was 80 the day before, and we got a foot of snow the next day, and it stuck to everything. I mean, the circumstances were a little different. I grant you, it was Arctic air that came in on the backside, so there's that. But bottom line is, the argument I can remember the day before from memory, the ground is too was 80 degrees today. How's it going to stay? Well, you know what? That holds true for about 30 minutes, and then that's done.
And also, the other thing you have to consider is rain. I mean, if it rains even for an hour or two before the change over to snow, that's going to impede, unlike what we sometimes have when it's very cold and every flake suddenly sticks immediately. As soon as the snow begins, and within 5 minutes, the ground is already covered. If it rains even for an hour or two, that's going to slow down or slow up the sticking of the snow.
All right. Well, this is all true. Um, Surface map at 21Z. The low is in northern Alabama. We've got a warm sector that's setting up in the southeastern part of the U.S. The Actually, if you look at the isobars with this, they're actually pointed. When we've seen storms that go to our west, you see the isobars kind of pointed up, uh, up the Appalachians toward western Pennsylvania or eastern Ohio. But in this particular case, if you notice where the isobars are bagged out, they're actually bagged across western North Carolina, western Virginia, and then right into eastern North Carolina. There's a frontal boundary there. So this thing is not going to go up the west side of the Appalachians. In fact, the models which were taking it up to northern West Virginia just a couple of days ago, and even into southwest PA on one run, this is going to actually, I think, wind up straddling the Virginia North Carolina state line as it moves eastward. And then we're going to probably see a center jump to just off the southern tip of the Delmarva Peninsula before it goes out east northeast. So this is taking a track that's favorable for a heavy snowfall, but you got to have all the other pieces in there, and we don't have. Oh, 200! Wow.
205.
Um, Yes. Obviously, with temperatures today, it was only in the 30s in upstate New York and mostly 40s everywhere else. You had to go down to Southern Virginia and North Carolina to get into the 50s. So yeah, it was warmer. It was warm, but it wasn't off the wall warm here. We're not
Right.
starting out from upper 50s and 60s here. And
We
the air
didn't.
back I'm sorry, I
I
was
was.
just going to say that the air coming down to the northwest with the northern shortwave, which is not all that strong, is not all that particularly cold either. So we're going to have to do it with dynamic cooling and all the rest of it. And at least we have a very cold atmosphere aloft, and that might help the cause. We'll again in about 12 hours. If it's snowing heavily 12 hours from now, then we kind of know where we're going as far as the forecast is concerned.
And we may even have a bit of convection. You think still? Maybe a rumble or two of thunder
Yeah, why
tomorrow.
not?
Uh,
For
in,
somebody,
yeah, for
why
some.
why why not? It might come at that right at the beginning stage before it changes over, perhaps, while the low is beginning to deepen fairly rapidly, or maybe if there's convection, it might be closer to where the low center is. But I think there's a chance. The satellite loop is fairly impressive. That subtropical Pacific jet came in 2 days ago, started to prime the atmosphere up. And if you look back, what we're going to watch is this expanding area of bright white clouds in Ohio and Indiana, southern Indiana and Illinois. If you look closely, you can see the rotation. That's that upper low. And we mentioned how the uh, that was so important in terms of the overall track. In fact, let me bring up a graphic that I did today, Joe. You might find this interesting. Here's now. This is how usually when you look at these things, um, if you have a situation like this where you have an upper low and a fairly well-defined short wave, what has changed over the course of the last few days is that this upper low, which was initially forecast to track up into northeastern Pennsylvania and even up into upstate New York and into interior southern New England, the usual rule of thumb is in wintertime situations is you look at the track of the upper low, not the surface low, but the upper low. And the heaviest snow usually falls in a band 50 to 120 miles north and west of that track. Now, when I say heaviest snow, okay, that could mean just 2 to 3 inches if nobody else gets anything. But that band sets up uh, across northwest New Jersey to probably just north of you, Joe, to northeastern Connecticut on the northern end, and on the southern end, it comes in along the New Jersey coast, probably roughly at about the Ocean County, Monmouth County line, and goes southwest to Wilmington to about Baltimore. So, based on the track, based on the tract of the upper low, this is where I would put the heaviest snow bands.
Okay, that's certainly well worth noting. In fact, I remember there was a rule many years ago where you take into account not the 500 but the 850 upper low as to trying to fix where the heaviest snow or the axis of heavy snow would be, or where that would fall. And that's back in the day. I don't know
Right.
how I don't know how many people still look at such things or whatever. You remember there was something. And again, now I'm showing my age here, but you certainly go far enough back. Remember, there was a chart called the magic chart.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Everybody, it had some success for several different storms and everything. Oh, we have to look at the magic chart and see what it's indicating. That's
Well, like everything, like everything in the world of weather, it works until everybody starts using it, and then it stops working.
exactly.
And then
Ex-
and so there's that. So the
I want
satellite pre go ahead.
can I just I want to share my screen one more
Yeah,
time
go
here.
ahead.
And just this is I mentioned before. This is the European now, and this is based upon the run that came out on February the 10th.
Can you
That
just,
was
by the way,
Saturday.
can you just bring the map up a little higher up? There you go. Yeah, a little bit more. Just a
Hold
smidge.
on, hold on.
Yeah, you love when you hit the sounding button. I do that all the time.
Um, so let me bring this up. How's
There,
that?
that perfect, perfect.
That's all right. So that's good. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is the run from. Oh, I lost it. What? Hold on. Hold on. Don't you love technology?
Less and less.
18Z, February 10th. All right. And all right. So here is 18Z, February 10th. And this is for tomorrow morning. This is this is 66 hours out ahead. And you take a look at this and you say, and this is the FGen now, and all of these lines, all of these contours indicate where the maximum intensity of snow or precipitation is going to be. And take note of where it's located, Joe. Now, 2 days ago, this particular run of the European model was showing that all of this energy was going to be splattered across the middle and upper Hudson River Valley. And so you say to yourself, oh my goodness, places especially north of Interstate 84 are going to see the worst of this. They're going to see the heaviest amount, the most intense amount of precipitation coming down. So that's where the FGen was on the February 10th, this past Saturday's run. Now I want to show you moisture, 24-hour accumulated precipitation, and in doing that, we check out. Let's go to 21Z. Take a look at where 2 days ago the European had the northward extent of the half-inch line. This is where half an inch of precipitation is, where the green transitions to blue is where you have a half an inch. And of course, further south, even heavier isohyet totals of 3/4 and 1 inch. So this whole region just completely covered in 1/2 to 1 inch of moisture. And the last thing I want to point out also, in terms of thermodynamics, the temperature, the 2 meter temperature, 2 meters at 6 feet off the ground, and the contours showing, let's see, let's go back to the time of maximum precipitation, which would be what, 12Z? You could see the 32-degree line just about over my house in the lower Hudson Valley. And in fact, just 3 hours later, notice how the 32-degree line is dropped into northern sections of Westchester. So you look upon this and you say to yourself, okay, big snowfall, big snow event occurring across the Hudson Valley and points north, with temperatures dropping, and all this taking place. Again, this is the European 2 days ago. Now I want to show you. This is the very latest. I don't know if you had a chance yet to see the 96-hour run or the 90-hour run on the 18Z. This is the 18Z European for today. 18Z, February 12th, going out as far as 90. We don't have to go out as far as
I
90
I
hours.
I I did see I didn't look at the F-Gen, but I did see the other parts of it.
All right, so let's show you the F-Gen. And now, again, we're talking about all these people who are saying dynamics. Oh, the dynamics. And of course, 2 days ago, when we had all that FGM splattered across areas north of 84, especially, all of that energy, all of that dynamic. Now take a look. At 12Z, everything is much wider, if you will. There's only two significant contours. What it is showing is that the system is indeed winding up and getting stronger. But look at this. Now, all of a sudden, all of that activity, all of that energy is indeed winding up. But this is 18Z. This is not 7 o'clock in the morning. This is 6 hours later, 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And it shows indeed everything is winding up. But for us, it's gone. All of it is gone. There's no more intensity. There's no more. In fact, if anything, if this is right, at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, not only will the precipitation be over, even though Cape Cod and eastern Massachusetts may be getting walloped. For us, it's all but over, and we may even get some breaks of sunshine by this time. And if you want to take a look at the amount of precipitation, the accumulated amount, well, take a look at this. Take a look at this. Now, instead of all of that area all the way up past Albany getting splattered with at least a half an inch of moisture, look at this. Now, the half-inch line is all the way down to just south of where I am, Joe, up near the Westchester-Putnam County line and to extreme northwestern New Jersey. So all of that precipitation is now further south and further to the east than it was being projected 2 days ago. And here now, for all of you who are saying, okay, good, we've got all of that heavy moisture still over Long Island and New Jersey. Tom Contino, take note of this. Will you? Take a look at this now. Going to thermodynamics here. 2-meter temperature. Here are the contours. And I'm going to back up now. I'm going to go back up to 12Z Tuesday. Well, look, at 12Z Tuesday, the 32-degree line is down across central sections of Westchester. Not quite to New York yet, but you're saying, well, it's going south. So it looks like by 15Z or by 10 o'clock, it'll be into New York and part of Long Island, right? Look what happens at 15Z. Boom. It's still there. In fact, it goes maybe a little further to the north. And by 18Z, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Joe, my goodness, here is the 35-degree isotherm. Here is the 32-degree line. It's going all the way up past Montreal and into
Yeah,
central England. So, I mean,
I don't have a lot of faith in that. If we're getting heavy snow band, if we're getting heavy snow bands, the
yeah,
temperature's
if,
going to be down. The temperature's going to drop down to 32, or even some places may get down to 31, which would be just enough. I'm more impressed with the fact, we've got to remember the 2-meter temperatures are not going to, if the European is showing far less precip, so obviously it's not showing heavy snow bands, going to impact the temperatures. It is cold at 850, and I would argue that some of that's going to wind up mixing down. By the way, someone someone did ask me just to explain what we mean by dynamic cooling, and I think the best example of that is probably just take the example of a summertime thunderstorm, where it's hot ahead of it, and you get these updrafts that air plays into the development of the thunderstorm. But when it goes through, you'll notice that your temperature sometimes can drop like 20 degrees very, very quickly, and that's the cold. After the thunderstorm has basically absorbed all the energy it can, the air that comes down on the backside is colder air, and it mixes down to the surface. So it's something along those lines where we're going to have, some dynamics that are going to cause air to lift up ahead of it. Precipitation is going to form, and you're going to have some colder air mixing down. I don't, listen, everything you said is absolutely valid. I'm just, I'm on the other side of
If
that.
it takes
It's it's
if it takes its time, and Lord knows we've seen storm systems where we've been watching and waiting and waiting and waiting, and if it takes its time in developing and doesn't have that sudden explosive deepening, then a lot of what people are hoping for with the dynamic cooling or whatever is not going to occur here. It's going to probably occur again to the east, maybe eastern Long Island or maybe southeastern Massachusetts or Rhode Island, but it simply would not occur here. But if it does really start revving up, so to speak, in that time frame, again, 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock a.m., then we will see significant snowfall. Again, Joe,
right.
as I said, you'll be right if we can put together or string together 3 or 4 consecutive hours of 2 inches or more of snow. I'll be right if we can still manage to get 3 or 4 hours of 1 inch per
Right.
hour snow,
Well,
which
and
is
the other thing is, and we could also probably say that based, if certainly if you want to base it on the European, is that um, I might be, I may be, and I'm going to be too high. So that's going to be my issue. Your issue is going to be at least on certainly on the northern edge of that, where you've got that, what was it, above the 3 to 6. What did you have north of there?
I had 6 to 8.
Yeah. So
That's not
that's not going to happen.
that's not going to
So,
happen.
right. So either way, I mean, one of us is going to lose, although you may tend to lose in a less populated area, so there'll be less people angry with you than 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 I would. I just want to go back to the satellite because there's a signature here that you often look for, and this again this rotation I think is very very important in terms of what's coming out. And this is what we need to pay attention to because this first the batch of moisture that's moving through the Carolinas and Virginia now, and most of that's going out to the east, but it's a second area that's going to be that's going to make or break, and it's actually fairly impressive on the radar. If you look back to through Kentucky and into West Virginia, there's some rather well developed area. This is a fairly well developed area of heavy rain and probably some thunderstorms in here. So the radar signature, at least for now, is fairly impressive with this upper air feature that's moving along. We do have some rain, at least aloft now in central and south Jersey, by the way, and also in parts of southeast Pennsylvania. I don't know how much of that is reaching the ground, probably not much of it. You have to go down into North Carolina and South Carolina where we do have some heavier bands. And by the way, I have a squall line that's approaching me fairly quickly here. You can see it, this tail end squall line that runs through eastern Tennessee and right down into Georgia, getting close to Atlanta. So if it holds together, I may get a kaboom in a couple of hours. So bottom line is, this is the HRRR. We have a new one is coming out, but it's not out far enough. So this was the last one at 23Z, and you can see the surface low on the map here. This would be at the 10 o'clock tonight. I'll just roll it back to the first hour. So it moves up into Western Virginia. You see it's kind of jumping around there a little bit. We get a center jump to just south of the Delmarva Peninsula, and then the low runs out east-northeast. So, when I was mentioning before about the comma head, Tom Contino, when you would look at this, you see how the precip is displayed, the radar echoes are displayed. This area in here, it kind of looks like a comma, sort of. So we often refer to the top of this here as the comma head. And in some of the bigger storms, if you think back to the February storm of 2313, that was one where the comma head basically set up right over Long Island and Connecticut, and places got 30 inches out of it. I mean, that's not going to happen this time around, obviously. But it's a fairly impressive looking feature. We'll have to see. The low deepens from a 992 to by the time it gets to Cape Cod, it's down close to 984. Some of the models have it down in the 970s, which I think is reasonable that we could get there given what the upper air looks like. And you know, it's you got 6 hours to pull this off, roughly, uh, between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. If you're further west, uh, Jeff Yinks, you said you were near Harrisburg. I just forgot your question. Um, Let me just go back to your comment here. Oh, here we go. 1 to 3, so many crazy numbers going around. Some places 4 to 8, 5 to 10. I thought the Weather Service had Harrisburg in a winter storm warning. But anyway, I think we've kind of, pretty much put it all on the table here, Joe, as far as where this is going or what this might be doing, right?
I've just, and yeah, I don't really know. I mean, we haven't done anything about long range yet, but it just, and it's what I've been saying for years. Sometimes, you say, oh, let's go long range. Sometimes it's hard enough to go 24 hours, much less 5 days out.
This is about as uncertain a time of 24 hours that I can remember in a long, long time. I mean, anytime when it comes to a snow forecast, because we have so much pressure on weather people to get it right, uh, because everybody apparently is, everybody's life comes to an end when it comes to whether there's white flakes come out of the sky. But that being said, um,
Usually, we've
we
said often, I've said often that you want to get within 72 hours because once you get within 72 hours and there's more data going into the data sets and into the supercomputers, that the various model guidance all end up on the same page or close to being on the same page. Instead, this is a paradox because instead, what we've been seeing over the last 72 hours are all the models going every which way. And that really confuses the issue. And as Craig Allen, as I mentioned at the top of the show, said, I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of this information up against the wall and whatever sticks I'll go with tonight on News Radio 880. And I feel exactly how Craig feels. And I know you do too, Joe.
yeah,
It's a very, very rough forecast.
right. Now, if this were in the 2000 to 2020 period, I would I would feel very confident in my much more confident because during that 20-year time frame, if you bet upside, you won. Um, so now the last 4 years have kind of thrown that back up into question. As far as the long range goes, does the polar vortex split? Does it not split? One run it splits, one run it doesn't split. So I'm not quite sure how to play this out. It seems like for some reason on the off model runs, let me go back and look at the 12Z. Um, there is a split on the 12Z. It's a minor split, and then it looks like the vortex sort of rolls back up into a ball up in Siberia again. There's been so looking at this, the PV has been so inconsistent for the last couple of weeks. It splits on one run, it doesn't split on the other. So I'm just gonna, for now, we'll just pass that by. Basically, when we look at the upper air in the long range, it uh, pretty much seems to be in a place where the trough wants to be in the east for the next couple of weeks, and the ridge wants to be in the west for the most part. So I will say that we'll probably have we'll probably have some chances along the way in the next 2 weeks with this sort of pattern. Whether any of them come to, whether anything major comes out of it is a whole nother question.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
by the way, Bill Goodman, uh, Bill Goodman, I was speaking to him the other day, and he's been doing some interesting research with regards to snowfall and in the New York area. And one thing he's noticed is that the um, the number of storms that would fall in the 90th percentile or higher, in other words, the big storms, the number of big storms has been steadily increasing. The number of smaller storms has been steadily decreasing. So we're getting fewer storms, but the ones that we do get are producing, as opposed to years ago when you would get a lot of these 1 to 3, 2 to 4 deals, and every 4 or 5 years you'd get something that was big, and in some
Right.
cases you waited longer than that. But it seems that certainly over the last 20 years, that those bigger storms there's more of the big ones, and fewer of the small ones, which is kind of interesting.
I will point out that what we now are looking at is the first winter storm warning for New York City.
In two
since
years.
since January 29th, 2022. And in
Yes.
case you haven't gotten your calculator out, that's 744 days since New
And
York
that's
was.
and by the way, that's nowhere close to a record because I think it used to be the heavy snow warning, and then they switched it to a winter storm warning. We went 6 years from the Lindsay snowstorm in 1969. The next time that we had a a winter storm, the next we had to wait till 1975 for the next time we had a winter storm warning.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, so 2 years is nothing. We've gone longer than that.
Now I'm going to go when I go to sleep tonight and before I wake up tomorrow morning, although I probably won't do that. I'll probably end up waking up every 2 or 3 hours just checking, on the computer to see what's going on or whatever like that. Wouldn't it be funny, Joe, with this southward push? Wouldn't it be funny if it pushed so far south that New York and the Hudson Valley got hardly anything out of this, and it was
Right,
everything.
and it buries Central and South Jersey like the one like the storm from a few weeks ago.
Well, I got to tell you, I haven't. It's been a while since I've actually seen a southward push like this in just the last 2 or 3 days.
Well, particularly because going into like from day five on, it started at day five, and it went further north, further north, further north, further north, and then all of a sudden yesterday at 12Z, it went the other way, further south, further south, further south, further south, and
Right.
it hasn't stopped. I would have thought by now it would have stopped. I would have thought that it would have gone and maybe ticked a little further north on one run and maybe ticked a little further south on another, but basically just kind of be in the same place. It was still doing it as of 12Z, and actually I think even at 18Z it might have ticked a little bit further south. By the way, I'm just telling you, I'm not going to show it, but I'm looking at the HRRR snow amounts and from the latest run. Okay, and um, Poughkeepsie, not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing. Okay. Middletown, 1 inch. Hartford, an inch and a half. These are places that were getting double-digit amounts just like a couple of runs ago. 2.9 at Waterbury. Also the amounts further south around New York City and Long Island have gone down too. Now, 8 for Islip, 8 for New York City, 6 for Yonkers, but the amounts in Central and South Jersey have gone way up. 8.5 at Toms River, 8.6 at Long Branch, 5.1 at Philadelphia, 6.3 at Trenton. So, this south move may not be done. We may get burned. We may both get burned one in both directions here.
Uh,
I've not,
my
here we
grandfather
are,
wanted. My grandfather wanted me to take a civil service job.
right? I'm looking, Joe. If you go north of Route 84, there's nothing. There's hardly anything.
Yeah. Well,
And this is again. This is the HRRR, by the way.
I'm
So
looking
it's
at I'm looking at Le Plumes right now.
well, I saw the La Plumes. Now I get the map here, which I think is easier to read than having to fool around with that chart. Um,
Right.
I don't. So I haven't looked to make a comparison. So this actually will be helpful, Joe. So what did the plumes just pick out? Just a couple of spots.
Well, Poughkeepsie, for example, they have 5.31 for
Okay.
uh,
On
for
on
snow.
my on the map that I have for the SREF,
Yeah.
so I don't know what they do to it. Okay. This is a 10-1. All right.
This is 21Z, by the way.
Right.
21.
And I have the 21Z the map plot for it. They have
Right.
Poughkeepsie at 3.2. So you say they're at what, 5.1?
5.31.
5.3. So Poughkeepsie here on the map is 3.2. Middletown is 5.3. What about New York City? Something around New York City.
Let's check New York. Their New York is LaGuardia,
Okay.
and they have for LaGuardia from this they have 8.92.
Okay. So on the map here, they got 9.7 for New York City.
Right.
So the map is not that far from whatever they show on that thing, on that weird graph thing that they have. So the plumes have been pretty consistent. They've been actually going up all day. So Oh, this is going to be such fun in about 12 hours. Um, oh, there was a couple of things. Hold on, I got to go back to.
I will tell you, and I'm looking on the graph here. Now, this is for, um, let me just make sure I've got this. No, okay. I want to go back to New York. Hang on for
Uh,
1 second.
all right, and then while you're doing that, let me just do. We got super chat hits from Steve Lapointe, and we're doing the plumes. Jason Kaplan. This one has been something else to forecast. Thank you for the super chat, and of course, no super chat is complete. We guess unless we get a super chat from. You ready, Joe? PP
PP
face.
face.
Yes,
PP face
thank you,
12.
PP face. And Leon Probitsky hit it earlier. I think I did say thank you, but if I didn't, I'm saying it now. Thank you for hitting super chat. On Jeff Yinks hit it a second time.
Hey, Jeff
Thank
is
you, Jeff.
Jeff has
And
hit it. Jeff has hit it 4 times.
four times.
Four times.
Wow.
Twice from David Fuller, 4 times from Jeff Yingst. Of course, we have Helen Bertona, Joe Arabia, Junior Ferrante, Tom Contino. Thank you, Tom. Howard A., Long Island Weather, PP Face 12, Leon Probitsky, Jason Kaplan, and Steve Lapointe. And I think I got everybody.
And by the way, on the poll tonight, our CBS News estimates, Joe, with 273 votes tallied, uh, 30% are with you, 70% are with me.
Oh,
So,
well.
so I guess I win all the convention delegates. Um,
Well, we'll see.
we'll
We'll
see.
tomorrow at this time, won't we?
Listen, that HRRR makes me think that that we're both going to go down the drain.
Incidentally, the on the plumes, as best as I can read this graph, at LaGuardia, as of 7 a.m., they give 2.86 inches of snow. And then 3 hours later, at 10 o'clock, it's up to 6.13. So so that they go from well, what did I say here for
Basically, 4 inches in what 3 hours? 4 inches in 3 hours, or something like that.
something like that,
All
something like
right.
that. So,
You need to ring the bell because we're over 300 likes.
oh my goodness, maybe we should get an air horn. There you go.
But don't get an air horn. Do not get an air horn under any circumstances. Do not get an air horn.
Okay, I won't.
Okay. All right. So, on that note, um, let us now say goodnight, and we will see everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time when we will have the verdict of all of this. Okay?
I can
Nighty
hardly
night.
wait. I can hardly wait.
I know. Nighty night.
Nighty night, folks.